cooperation for all involved parties. This was a very serious explosion, and all of us, the CSB, the TCP, the community, and the industry, as well as a number of other federal agencies investigating the incident, want to know what happened and why it happened. That is the mission of the CSB. We are a safety investigatory agency, not a regulatory agency. At the conclusion of our investigations, we will issue safety recommendations that are intended to address the safety gaps identified and to prevent recurrence of similar catastrophic failures. We do not levy fines or penalties. Our investigation is in the very preliminary stages. I can confirm a few basic facts about the incident. On November 27, 2019, there was a major incident at the TPC group facility in Port Neches, Texas. The facility produces a chemical called butadiene, which is used, among other things, to make rubber. At about 1 a.m., 3 workers were working on equipment in the TPC facility and witnessed the loss of containment of process fluid. The released process fluid created a large vapor cloud. The workers recognized the significance of the release and immediately evacuated the area. Shortly after, the vapor cloud ignited, causing a massive explosion. At least 3 other workers were nearby at the time of the explosion and sustained injuries. Worker descriptions of the incident are consistent with this being a release of butadiene, which is flammable and toxic chemical. Later in the afternoon, during the ongoing fire, there was a second explosion on the unit that launched a process vessel from the unit. Following the second explosion, a tower fell over into the unit. I should point out that our investigators have not yet been able to enter the area where the explosion occurred. The area is unstable and is unsafe for our investigators. That will be our first priority once we know that the area is stable and safe to enter. I know that this event has been very disturbing for the community surrounding the facility. Thousands of residents were forced out of their homes over Thanksgiving. The basic rule of safe operations at any facility are to keep the product in the pipes. Safety management systems are developed and implemented to ensure this. On the morning of November 7th, there was a fundamental failure in the system that resulted in this major incident. At the CSB, we are committed to keeping our nation safe from chemical disasters. We will conduct a thorough and transparent investigation of this incident. And more importantly, we will share the lessons learned with the entire industry and nation to ensure that we don't see this type of catastrophic failure again. I will be happy to take your questions. Sir.
And
if anyone on the phone lines has questions, you can hit star then 1 on your touch-tone phone.
We're going to go to the room first, and then we'll come back to the phone.
You said there was a fundamental failure in the system. Have you identified what that failure was or might have been? And was the work underway? What led to the release of the vapor?
Harold, would you like to?
At this point, it's since we've just started our investigation, we do not have that information yet as far as to the fundamental failure. As far as the workers working on specific equipment, at this point, based on what we know now, we do not believe they were working on the equipment that failed.
You mentioned you not have been able to get into the facility as of when do you believe you could get into the software investigation, thorough investigation?
Okay, as far as entry into the site, the Emergency Operations Center is responsible for ensuring the safety of the site, and we will enter the site when they have deemed it safe to do so.
So several videos that I've assisted at the time of the explosion showed the Lions Estimers plant behind
Sorry, this is Jacob Dixon, the Beaumont Enterprise. So to restart my question, a lot of eyewitness videos show that several plants around this one started to flare shortly before the initial explosion. Is there any evidence or anything that you guys have found out about when first responders or nearby plants were told that there might have been an issue?
At this point, we don't have that information.
Okay.
Hi, Erica with ABC Houston. Let's talk a little about air quality and safety of the residents. So we know there's been a lot of back and forth in terms of evacuation, concerns about asbestos exposure, et cetera, and that last night, another, I guess, voluntary evacuation was issued. What was the new, I guess, development or heightened issue that would cause this new voluntary evacuation? And then if you do know the answer, why would the most vulnerable, like nursing homes and hospitals, be left off of that if indeed there were these valid concerns?
Okay. We do receive the advisories from the EOC on these types of situations. As far as the specifics of it, I would have to refer you to local officials. They would have that information.
I guess any advice or whatnot in terms of residents or whatnot. Like I said, it's just kind of a lot of back and forth and a lot of confusion, and what the main issue and concern is. And I know obviously you're at the very, very infancy of your investigation, but it just seems like a lot of people are in limbo and don't have a lot of hard-cut answers in terms of what's in the air and what they're dealing with.
Understood.
And can they come back? I mean, I know it's voluntary, but if we're dealing with some very serious stuff, do everybody need to get out of Dodge or what?
Okay. And again, our goal in the incident is to conduct our investigation and make recommendations to prevent this from happening in the future. Any issues concerning the local community, I'll have to direct you to the local officials.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, Daryl. Let's go to the line and see if we have any questions.
And if anyone has a question, you can press star then 1 on your touchtone phone. And we have a question from Mike Lee from E&E News.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. In your experience, how unusual is it to have an evacuation order or a shelter-in-place order this far after the time of an incident?
I'm going to answer that question. It's not unusual while there's still emergency operations in progress to be ultra careful and conservative about evacuations and sheltering in place.
In this case, though, is the fire still going on or is it out?
Lauren, would you address that, please? Okay.
The latest word that the CSB received was this morning is that all fires were out or out at this time.
Yeah. So I mean, is it unusual to have an evacuation order, after the fire's out?
Okay, so can I.
Okay.
Please,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
It's not unusual, and for the reasons that when the fires are out, the gas is still there. So at this point, certainly the CSB, since we are in the beginning, we have not been able to identify those areas, but we are working, getting updates from the EOC on the progress of discovering where all the leaks are, and hopefully we'll be able to find them and secure them soon. Not we, but the responders of the incident and TPC.
Okay. And then follow up, if I could, what sort of damage are you seeing in the surrounding community? We've seen reports of windows being blown out, doors knocked off hinges. Have you had a chance to assess that?
You want to address that, Harold, please?
Sure, I can. Because of the nature of the volatility of the site, we haven't been able to do a total assessment. We've been able to get into some areas, not on the site, but nearby. From what we can tell, the CSB has not seen extensive damage outside of the facility at this point. And again, we haven't done a total assessment because there are certainly some areas that have been under the evacuation orders and shelter in place. So.
Sure. Please.
We did have a team walking around the local community outside the facility. There was some damage to some structures outside of the facility, homes, etc. And that's something that we are looking at to see kind of how the force of the explosion has affected the local community.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'll get back in line.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else on the line?
Yeah, we have a question from Jeff Johnson from Chemical and Engineering.
That's great. Thank you. Have you had a chance, I guess the company's talked about air monitoring. Have you had a chance to see any of the air monitoring data that has been collected so far? And I have one more question.
Lauren?
Is that clear? Should I restate it?
No, that was clear. Thank you.
Yep, there are organizations performing air monitoring outside of the community. The results of that monitoring is something that we are going to be looking at in our investigation to see what the impact was to the community. As to the specifics of their readings, that's not something we are certain of at this point in our investigation.
Okay. This was a private equity firm that owned this. And I believe the situation in Philadelphia with PES was also a private equity firm. Is there any message that we should take in mind with having these financial institutions buying these and running these chemical companies and refineries?
Well, I appreciate the question and thank you, but I don't think we're prepared to answer that question. That's our goal is to determine the root cause, and we don't get involved in that kind of discussion. Thank you.
Well, maybe it sometimes is the root cause, but okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
And we do have one more question. It's from Stephen McGinn from Argus Media.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. A question about access to the other sections of the TPC complex, are like storage tanks, rail lines, dock space. Is that available if you're a customer trying to access your product in those tanks?
Can you answer that, Lauren? Please.
And if not, is there a time frame?
As for customers trying to access products within the facility, that's something that the customers are going to have to communicate directly with TPC about.
So, are they able to access what's in those tanks and pull it out?
The whole facility is still, we're calling it an emergency location. So as far as removing material from the tanks, that's going to be a future operation once the site is deemed to be safe.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right, guys, you've been listening into a news conference held by the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. Some things to take note of is they are issuing some safety recommendations once they're able to figure out what exactly happened. They are not able to go into the area of the plant right now because of that second explosion that happened last Wednesday. They're saying the area is unsafe. Now, as far as what exactly happened, they weren't able to answer that because they haven't been able to get into the facility and break down and get to know exactly what happened. But they did say it was a fundamental failure in the systems. Right now, they're not working on any of the equipment at the area that failed. There's going to be another news conference today with TPC Group and Jefferson County Emergency Management. That conference is going to start at 2 o'clock today. And again, we're going to be hopefully getting some more answers and be able to let you know. And you can always continue this coverage on our 12 News Now app. So make sure you have that downloaded, and that's where you can get the latest information when you need it. Again, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock once that second news conference starts to let you know and keep you informed on what's going on.